a week would go by and somebody would walk in and it looked like they had taken like a fat coat off. Like in 1 week, all of a sudden the body looked so different.
Why is fasting such an, kind of from the beginning, like what first piqued your interest and then why did you dive head in with so much curiosity?
I think the biggest piece that if I could really emphasize to people, I was in practice for 25 years and I had a very, very busy practice, much like Melissa and her husband, like just tons of people coming in, biohacking, everything from chiropractic to detox to nutrition advice to hormone balance, like everything we could naturally do. We were doing it with a huge emphasis on lifestyle. And about 10 years into my practice, I started to notice some new trends. And a couple of the trends were people weren't coming in with one symptom anymore. Everybody was coming in with 5 to 10 symptoms, mostly women. Women were coming in with a lot more symptoms than men. But all of a sudden nobody had one symptom. It was like literally nobody. They all had a variety. Second thing is when I was first in practice, I had people that would say, well, quite sure what you're saying. I'm going to go check it with my medical doctor and see what he was usually he says. And 10 years in, what I heard from women specifically is whatever you do, I do not like, this is what they literally sounded like. I do not want to go back to my medical doctor. He doesn't understand me. He just gives me antidepressants. He doesn't get what I'm doing with my lifestyle. Like I am never going back there. Like really strong, vehement, like I'm here to keep myself out of that office. Mm-hmm. So I was doing a lot of detox. I was doing a lot of nutrition. And we were getting good results. We were getting great results. And somewhere along this journey, I discovered the research on fasting. And when I first discovered it, I discovered it through the lens of autophagy. So autophagy is this idea that in the absence of food, there are many things that stimulate autophagy, but in the absence of food, the cells heal themselves. Well, that was in my ethos of health, that the body heals itself. I never doubt that. I knew the body healed itself. So I was like, well, what if fasting could get people to start to heal in a quicker way? So I started teaching what I call metabolic. Well, it's not my term, but what is called metabolic switching, where I was giving food advice, teaching people how to eat good food. But I was having them compress that food into an eating window, leaving a longer period of time for fasting. And at the beginning, I only knew intermittent fasting. I only knew like 13 to 15 hours. That was what the original autophagy studies were done on. We didn't have all the studies we have now. So I just gave everybody a 15-hour window of fasting, leaving, 9 hours for eating. And just that one thing dramatically change people's health and quickly. Like in my clinic, I would see people every week or every couple of weeks because we were working so much on lifestyle. And so like a week would go by and somebody would walk in and it looked like they had taken like a fat coat off. Like in 1 week, all of a sudden the body looked so different. And I kept trying to figure out what is the body doing just by tacking this 15 hours on. So I kept going back to the science and going back to the science. And that's where I figured out that there are 6 different length fasts. And that when I put people into these different length fasts, their body healed in extraordinary ways. And in Fast Like a Girl, I map out those 6 different length fasts. So the first thing I want to say is putting yourself in a fasting window. Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that. I love seeing my book up and everywhere. I have people that are like, I was in the airport and I saw a bunch of people reading your book. I've been on airplanes where I've seen people reading the book. So it's very sweet. But when you put yourself in this fasted state, what I really want you to know is it's a healing state. And so the longer you stay in there, more healing happens. So the most common question I get is, how long should I fast? And the response to that is, well, what kind of healing are you looking for? Are you trying to heal your gut? Well, then let's throw a 24-hour fast. Did you overdo it on vacation? And so you needed to detox? Okay, well, we just need to go 17 hours. Do you have really stuck weight? Okay, well, 36 hours, what the research shows is the thing that will get the body to unstick weight. And we've proven that in our community as well. So I started looking at these healing lengths as healing tools. Then when we went back to food, I just kept food really simple. It was like, just eat real food, like just eat nature's food, like just get off the chemicals. Mm-hmm. And so I had to teach, that's a little more complicated than you would think, but I had to teach people just some basic food philosophies. What happened was short of a miracle.
Hey, real quick, have you ever felt like there's no time to rest, put your feet up, or even think about picking up a book? It's exactly why I created Best Friends Book Nook. This is not your typical book club. It's designed for busy women just like us who are wanting to connect with ourselves, grow, but without the pressure. In this free community, we choose inspiring, easy to read books and create space for ourselves, even if it's just 5 minutes a day to breathe, reset, and finally enjoy a little me time. The best part, we have regular community connection calls where we share insights, connect, and support each other. If this sounds like what you've been craving, check the links to Book Nook in the description. We'd love to see you there. Now back to the show.
We literally, I say this with full transparency, my in-house supplement business went way down. My profits in supplements went way down, because I no longer needed the supplements to repair your gut. I no longer needed the supplements to improve your brain power. I no longer needed supplements to help your adrenals. I just needed to teach you how to go in and out of these different fasting lengths. So that blew me away. The other thing that blew me away is that women got so excited about this fasting tool, they started doing it more and more and more. And a byproduct of that was, and I was one of those women, the byproduct of that is then I started getting people coming in and saying, my menstrual cycle is not really regular and my hair is falling out. And so I went back to the books and I looked at, what does estrogen need? What does progesterone need? What does testosterone need? And that's when I realized, women have to do this metabolic switch according to their menstrual cycles. And so there are times when your body can handle a longer fast, and there's times when they can't. And if you have a menstrual cycle, I will tell you that the easiest way to understand this is when your hormones go high. This is during ovulation, day 11 to day 15, and right before you bleed, day 20 until the day you bleed. Those are not great times for longer fasts. But when your hormones go low, day 1 to day 10, they're in a lower state. Day 16 to day 19 in a lower state. This healing tool called fasting, if I throw a 3-day water fast at you, if I give you a dopamine reset, 48-hour fast, it works in alliance with your hormones, and you can still use this healing tool. So that's really how Fast Like a Girl was developed. It was a clinical tool that I used. I saw it work on my women in my practice. I made modifications based off of what they told me. And then I went and taught the world on YouTube and on my socials. And I got more and more confirmation that this metabolic switch time to a woman's hormones worked. To the point now, I just don't doubt it. You can go read my Amazon reviews. Sometimes I read them just to see the miracles that are happening. But one of the biggest things we're seeing is infertility. Women that are struggling to get pregnant all of a sudden now are able to get pregnant. They didn't have to spend $30,000, $40,000 on infertility medication. They just learned to metabolically switch according to their hormones, which is insane. So there's a lot of we can take this metabolic switch and we can really use it in a lot of different places. The last thing I want to say, and then we'll field the questions, is what about the menopausal woman? So if you're in perimenopause, and we can talk about, some questions around that. There's a lot more nuance there. Now, I will tell you, I discovered this in my 40s. So in my perimenopausal years, I'm 54 now. And I experimented on my perimenopausal body. For example, at 45, when I started spotting, and then a week later, I had a period. When I brought that up to doctors, they would say, oh, you're just going into perimenopause. When I brought that up to functional medicine doctors, they were like, yeah, you better go look at progesterone. Progesterone needs more glucose. So I learned to add carbs back in and carb load when I started spotting. And by the time I was 49, 50, I had the best periods of my life. I had figured it out. At 50 years old, I had figured it out. And then, 4 years later, it went away. So there's a lot there. And then the last thing I will say for the menopausal woman, and something new that I'm really, really thinking a lot about lately, is that we know 6 years after your last period, your brain is actually at its best. So even though perimenopause is bumpy, your brain reorganizes itself and actually is one of the best, most productive brains. Your amygdala, the part of the brain that is fight or flight, actually turns off the fight or flight reaction and becomes more empathetic. And so I've been thinking a lot about, well, what's the metabolic switch, the best switch for the menopausal brain? And this came from a discussion with Lisa Mosconi. She wrote a book called The Menopause Brain. I brought her onto my podcast, and she told me that the 6 years after your last cycle, that brain for a woman is the least sensitive to glucose. So if you go slamming into your postmenopausal years with a metabolic system that is completely mixed up and you are insulin sensitive, now you have all this glucose in your system, your brain doesn't know what to do with it. And so it stores it as fat, it starts to kill neurons in the brain, and this leads to dementia and Alzheimer's. So my new feeling is this metabolic switch for the postmenopausal woman is stupid important, because your brain favors ketones. And Lisa and I talk about that on the podcast. Every postmenopausal woman I've spoken with tells me, yeah, when I go into ketosis, like the light bulbs go on, which I think a lot of us feel. So just something new that I'm working on that I think is important to say.
If you like that, you'll enjoy the full version, and you can get that simply by clicking here. Be sure to also subscribe so you don't miss any future content.